I'm Debby Paris. If you haven't been on one of Red, Wine, and Blue Zooms before, I'm so glad you're here. I'm the founder of Red, Wine, and Blue. And we wanted to have this time here together tonight because connection is so important. I started Red, Wine, and Blue because I know about the power of women in community. It's always the only way, community and connection, and that has never been more true. We sent out an email, and I also posted it in Sweep, our national Facebook group, just sort of connecting with people in the hours after we got the results of the presidential election. And I've heard from thousands of you. And we have a shared feeling of despair right now. And we're shattered, we're shook. And those feelings can lead to a real sense of loneliness and isolation. And we don't want that. We want to remind ourselves that we are not alone. I promise you, no matter where you are Zooming from tonight, you are not alone. Not only because you are here, but because there are women who think and feel like you do in every community in this country, even when it feels like it's not that way. And we've made a real priority at Red, Wine, and Blue in making that something you can feel and touch by launching our Trouble Nation program in the last year. I want to make sure that we drop the link in that chat. Red, Wine, and Blue has over 500 local groups all across this country. It is the Trouble Nation page where you can go and put in your zip code and search for local groups around you. It's our most highly trafficked page on the website right now. And that's an expression of women needing each other, seeking each other out. If you go in and you look for your zip code and there's not a group too near you, you just reach out to our team and we're going to help connect you with other Red, Wine, and Blue members anyway and help you form a group because no one is alone. So if there's not a group there yet, we're going to help you start one. Okay. We have your backs. I'm serious when I say you're not alone. So the other thing that I think is important is that in this moment, you are not going to hear me sugarcoat a single thing. At the same time, it is important that we acknowledge what is true. And what is true is that at the very local level, there were a lot of wins on election day that matter, that are going to protect children and protect a lot of people in this country. And so it's important for us to acknowledge those bright spots because those represent the things that we can continue to build on by working together in our own communities. By coming together, we're stronger. We will build more and more local wins, and we'll be stronger as we fight for the things that we're going to need to defend against at a national level too. So I just want to go over what some of those things were very quickly. School board races at Red, Wine, and Blue have always been a huge priority. Ever since Moms for Liberty came on the scene, we have been there having your backs, working together in local communities to say no to school board extremism that's so harmful to children and public education. Red, Wine, and Blue worked in 118 school board races, and 3/4 of our candidates won. And all of those races, these wonderful candidates were going up against these Moms for Liberty type extremists. That is a victory that we can build upon. Just look at North Carolina. We were so disappointed in the result at the presidential level. But meanwhile, Mark Robinson, the extremist who ran for governor, he lost resoundingly. And Michelle Morrow, the Moms for Liberty leader who is running for state superintendent to run all of North Carolina's public schools, she lost too. And that has been a major focus for so many women in this community for more than a year. We also won critical Supreme Court races in Michigan. America is sending 2 Black women U.S. senators to the U.S. Senate for the first time at the same time for Maryland and Delaware. We have the first trans member of Congress, the first Korean American going to the U.S. Senate. We flipped critical state legislative seats in Ohio, in Michigan, where we're working on these state legislative races. In North Carolina, y'all broke the Republican supermajority. So I don't say this to sugarcoat and say, oh, it's all fine that Trump won the presidency. It's not fine. But it's yet another reminder that we're not alone, that there were wins at the local level, and this is what we will build on together. And here's the other thing that is just a dramatic difference as we process all these feelings, because I can't tell you the number of times I've heard women say in the last 48 hours, it feels like PTSD. Do some of you feel that? Well, that makes sense, right? Because we had 2016. But here's the thing that is different from 2016. We did not have this community. It felt like we were falling off a cliff and there was no one there to catch us, but now we're all here to catch each other. And we are not going away. I started Red, Wine, and Blue not to be some one-off, just come in for a few weeks around an election season. This is year-round local organizing work in communities. What we're going to do tonight is create the space for some processing in terms of how we are showing up for ourselves right now, as well as showing up for our kids, because the number of people I have seen, sharing in our Facebook groups, talking about how hard this is to support our kids and, all different ages. We're going to directly address that tonight too. And the thing is that, look, there's going to be hard work ahead. We have so much to do. And Red, Wine, and Blue is going to be by your side, helping to lead this fight every step of the way. But before we can do that, if we're going to be effective, if we're going to bring our creativity, our passion, our heart, which is how we did have these amazing local wins, if we're going to be able to bring our whole selves, we have got to process what has happened here and get a little bit more sturdy, maybe, than we feel right now. What I know about you all, in addition to feeling shook and shattered, is that you are also not giving up. You've said it a lot of times. And maybe some people feel like you're there right now. And other people, it's going to take a little bit longer. That's okay. That's why community is so critical. Sometimes I step up and you step back. And then other times you'll step up and I'll step back. And that's why all of us being here together is so, so important. So tonight is about gathering our people, reminding us we're not alone, holding each other tight, and finding a little bit more groundedness and sturdiness so that we can be the kick-ass, beautiful women that we are as a community together. Does that sound like a plan? I'm a lucky lady. I have a very talented mother who's going to help us meet the moment, and also an extremely talented mother-in-law who's going to help us meet the moment. My mom, who I'm going to bring up now, her name is Stephy Citron. She is based in Western North Carolina. She's been a practicing clinical psychologist for many decades. And she specializes actually in trauma and helping people process and get regrounded in times of trauma, whether that is something like this election just happening or living through a natural disaster or all the other work you've done globally, Mom. And for people in all different situations, the prison system, the education system. And so we have invited her to be here tonight to just help us check in with ourselves and see if we can't get just a little bit more grounded. So Mom, thanks for taking this time. It's always so good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Be with you all. Yeah.
All right. So what you told me, Mom, is that once I brought you on, that I could pass the mic and sit back and be able to take this in myself. So I'm going to take you seriously on that.
All right. This is for you too, Kate. This is for everybody here with your tea. And we're just going to take a minute, even though there have been these amazing wins, to notice that tonight is going to be a time for grief. That's not the only thing we're going to do, but that's where we need to start. And this is going to be a place for sadness, for fear, for anger. It's not for shallow platitudes demanding more work from all of you who have given yourselves so mightily. Grieving and lamentation are not symptoms of despair. Only the hopeless are silent. The observance of grief transforms the pain of lament into passion, which is where you have all been, and it is where you are eventually headed. Many of us feel immersed in threat right now, but before you can calculate your next moves, let's let ourselves have some time tonight to breathe. And then, in a shorter time for some of you, and for a longer time for others, you can check to see whether the ground you stand on in the Red, Wine, and Blue community is sturdy enough to support the weight of your convictions, if it's sufficiently tenacious, persevering, and buoyant to move through the darkness towards the rebirth of hope. Only then and new life energy emerge. What's the hardest part for all of you? And it's coming in on the chat, feeling hopeless, feeling like you failed, feeling embarrassed, feeling scared, feeling mad, distrust, having 3 daughters that don't get to see Kamala Harris be their president, for feeling fear for their trans daughter. So many things here. And just notice all of these, the future, feeling betrayed, feeling alone, angry, disillusioned, just sadness times 100, fear, disappointment in our country. They're just rolling in on that chat. Loss of faith, rage, tired, mortified, feeling such sadness for your grandchildren, exhausted, sick. Keep putting those down on the chat, but while you are, I'm just going to say that our capacity to grieve and lament is related to our capacity for hope. It's really a lot like a tree's canopy is proportionate to how large its root system is. And here is this root system made up of all of those roots, of all this passion and all this disappointment. So when something big like this happens, we know that transformation is in the wings. There's going to be a time later, sooner for some, when after study, analysis, and reflection, new strategies are going to emerge. And the next iteration of Red Wine and Blue relational organizing is going to emerge. You're going to expand to a new manifestation of the power of a connected group. But before that happens, can we just honor the space between? Can we just notice that maybe many of us are there today where we've got to step back after the disappointment and the shock and the horror and the anger, to step back to a more quiet space, to take a pause. And just if you could put in the chat what that's like, being in the pause. It may be dark, empty. You may feel lost, may not feel like you can make a sound. Uncomfortable, empty, lost, numb, tired, hopeless, unsettled, frozen, can't focus. All of those things. So as you all are rolling out all of what you're feeling, being in this pause, losing control, feeling numb, what's happening right now as you're in the pause? What is helping right now as you are here in this moment together in this pause? What's helping? Community, my dog, friends, support, this sisterhood, knowing I'm not alone, my Cocker Spaniel, relaxation. And as you're saying all those things and writing those down, just notice what happens on the inside in your body. Maybe you feel maybe just a little looser instead of so tight. Maybe more tears flowing. Calmer. Just talking with friends and people who are listening. Avoiding the news.
Sure.
Massage. My husband, friends, grieving together, community. And just notice that. Sitting in the sunlight. getting busy, spending time with my grandsons and with the kids, cleaning, feeling the support of my social group, playing pickleball, Hallmark cards, volunteering, yoga, all of those places in the pause. And just notice that. The next thing I want to do is ask you all. Now, this is a big one. I would like you to name the gift that no matter about the outcome that Trump won, what's the gift in this election cycle that you have had that no one can take away, regardless of the outcome of this election, and that you will have for the rest of your life? Family, community, growth, power, empowerment, purpose, determination, joy, sisterhood, strong community, reconnecting, pride. I found my voice, power, awakened. All of those things, knowledge, political activism, persistence, this wonderful sisterhood. Just notice, realizing the brilliance of what comes through. Just notice what happens in your body, the gift of confidence, being able to learn. That belongs to you, and you will have it forever. Gratitude. I want to read a short poem by Rosemary Latola Trommer. Today is made of lead, and I nod, and together we carry the weight. I'd like to end with a very abbreviated meditation inspired by Tara Brach. I'm sure several of you know her. And what I'd like to ask you all to do is if you would put your feet on the ground and just notice how the ground is supporting your feet, and lean back in your chair and notice how the chair is supporting your hips and your back and your thighs, and lean in, just allowing yourself to feel the support of the chair and of the floor. And let's start breathing together, letting our shoulders drop and our hands rest, taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And another one. A deep breath in and a deep breath out. Now, with this next breath, I want to ask you to breathe in all of the feelings that you have written down that have been unfolding since the election. Bring in the fear, the distress, the anger, the lack of safety, the feeling of rawness. And with the out-breath, surrender that river of pain into a sea of loving energy into your red, wine, and blue family. Again, on the in-breath, bring in the fear and the ache of what is now. And on the out-breath, breathe out into the heart of the world for all who have a concern for the future. and yearn for a better world. Notice what happens in your body on that out breath. Is it heavier or lighter? Tighter, looser, warmer, cooler? And remember what Kamala said. Look into the darkness on the in-breath and see the stars on the out-breath. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mom. And now we are going to, now that maybe we have that grounding, maybe a little bit more sturdiness, now we're going to talk about the ways that we can use that sturdiness in showing up for our kids. And by kids, I mean your kids, I mean grandkids, nieces and nephews, just the children in your life who you love at all different ages. And we are really lucky to have someone else who I love dearly, and I'm lucky to have love me, my mother-in-law, Debby Paris. Come on. You, like Mom, have been in clinical practice for many decades.
Many.
And have helped families with children of all different ages and stages of life. And so I just was hoping we could start by sort of actually bridging the connection between what we just did and this conversation, showing up for the kids in our lives.
Well, I'm so happy that Steffi led off, because what Steffi is addressing with all of you is where we all need to go before we can turn towards children, because it's so hard being a parent or a grandparent, because when our feelings are so activated, it's very hard to be available in a containing way to our children, because we have to be a filter. Doesn't matter what age they are, we need to be a filter of some sort. And mainly we need to be able to filter our own feelings some, so that we can be the containment in the community that our children need. So what Steffi was offering was a way of understanding we need to process a lot of things ourselves as the adults. And that takes time, and it isn't a one-step process, and it can go like this, and you can have days like this and days like that. It's always good to know when you go like that you come back up. But one of the things that struck me, Steffi, and what you were saying, is the communication and the expressing the feeling is so important. But one of the things your community offers, and that we also want to offer our children, it's not just expressing the feeling, it's that the feeling gets heard, that there is somebody that receives it and hears it. And that's what you all do for each other. That's what Steffi was just doing with all of you. And the idea that somehow you're supposed to put on a happy face will not get us very far, and will make us all feel worse, not better. And going to where the hurt is gives us a chance to let it start to get integrated, and the rest of us can come together around the hurt. The rest of us as a person can come together around the hurt and strengthen us, so that we can be available to our children in the way we want to be. And I think what's happened to all of us has also happened to our children in all different kinds of ways. We're talking about what the cultural results of all of this is going to be, but we're also talking about, you all have worked so hard and so beautifully and so importantly, and your children have observed it. And one of the things they were hoping for was a win, but one of the big teaching moments in it is, what happens when you lose? We are feeling like it's an endpoint at the moment because we're shocked and upset, but it really is not an endpoint. It is really the beginning of a next step. And that is something that we want to help our children with, not to deny how they're feeling. I think the worst feelings for people in general are hopelessness and helplessness. And that will make people feel stuck. And so what we want to help our children with is we're not helpless and we're not hopeless, though that's how we're feeling right now. That isn't the case. So that's a sort of matrix to think about what we're going to address with our children. But I think it's always interesting when you're talking about children, the generalities don't really help. We need to get to the specifics. But I want to share one thing. Last night, oh, we were all so upset. We went with a friend to a concert, which we'd had tickets for. I didn't want to go. We all decided we should go, and it was a beautiful concert. And my friend turned to me in the middle and said, well, they're not taking that away from us. And that's the personhood part. That hasn't been taken away from us, and it hasn't been taken away from our children, no matter how mean people are. Those were such painful things that you all were telling us. But it doesn't take away who we are as people and how we operate in the world. And that's what our goal is, to keep working towards that. And just to refer back to what Steffi was saying, you need time to feel this. You need time to feel this rage and this being done to. How do you give your children hope and a sense of future when all you're feeling right now is slapped down again? I think you need time to feel that. And I also want to just say about your tears, there's all kinds of reasons to cry. There's sadness, there's grief. But many times we cry when we feel helpless anger. I think the way to out of this over time is to have the anger not be so helpless. Have it be an activation thing in a way that's assertive and productive, not just a discharge. And this, I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking about how we help our children with the anger, that we try to find a way where it's productive. It's too soon. It's too soon. But I think that for your kids and for all of us, the idea that the fight is linear is what we all want, and never has the fight been linear. Never. You look at the suffragettes, it didn't go like that. Look at the ERA, we're still fighting the ERA. And certainly for Black and Brown and minority rights, it has been a slog and slapped down again and again. But we count all forward progress for kids. And that doesn't mean denying the back steps and denying the negatives, but it's showing that it goes like this and that people are capable of being better and people are capable of being worse. I think in terms of talking with your children, it's complicated because a conversation with children is never you say something, then they say something, then you say something, and they say something. That would be very nice if that happened. It's that we say something, and then we either get a reaction or a response way down the road. But I think what we're trying to help them with is what are they thinking and feeling? It's much easier to know what to say to children when you hear what they're thinking. So you've got your feelings about this totally legit and real. We don't know what their feelings are about this. So one of the things in this sort of ongoing conversation that's really for the rest of their lives and your lives is, what did you make of all of this? What are you most afraid of? What experiences have you had? And then the conversation can happen. One of the great things about being a parent of children, it's also the hardest thing. Anything that can be talked about can be mastered and handled. It's the things that aren't talked about, that go underground, that drive things in a way that are so difficult. And then you see it in behavior or expression or a retreat. And, you know, it's not that that doesn't happen. It's okay when that happens, but we can use it as the signal. There's something to talk about and know about. And the strategies for talking about children is never to force it, but just to raise it. And often to say, when you're ready, you'll tell me. And you're not alone. So in a way, the red, wine, and blue community for all of you is what parents are for their children. You're there, you're interconnected, you're to be counted on. One other thing, the world's a very big place. You are feeling the whole world right now. Children need the world to be a little more filtered. First community is the family, and that's the community that's the most important as the growing up goes. And what you want to do is say, whatever happens out in the world, we've got each other. I have a nephew that used to say, we have arch other. And It's the tenderness of that is very important to the kids. That is why, cycling back to what Steffi was talking about, all of you getting yourselves time and a chance to feel it so that you have the strength to be there for your children is so important. But the corollary is, and anybody that's a parent knows this, when you hit it right or when you hear something for your children, you feel like a superwoman. So when you want to know where does the strength come from, in a sense, it comes from the small community of our family and the exchange. When I said about doing in our family what Red, White, and Blue is doing for each other, I mean it. That what we want to communicate to, particularly young adults, it's such a big transition point. They're not adults yet, but they're looking at what is the future going to be like, and they're looking at a real sort of national movement that is foreign and scary and terrible, over which they feel they have no control. So we shrink it down to what can they control? What do they want to do? And how do we help them get there? And the community doesn't have to be big. You know, one of the great things about Red, Wine, and Blue is it makes small communities within your large community. I also want to just say at this point, for all of us, but also particularly for the kids who are feeling so vulnerable, it is really helpful to have somebody to talk to sometimes outside of the family. Whether it's a pastoral counselor, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a teacher at school, it makes the world bigger in an okay way without it being overwhelming. And it also gives space to say things and be heard. For the children that are more vulnerable, for people of color, for people that are marginalized, for the trans, and for women. We're not marginal, but we're a minority, even though we're not a minority, and we're being treated that way. It's very important to identify that, speak to it, know the truth of it, and then work towards one little thing. I'm a big believer in little steps, not big steps. I don't know how many of you know baseball, but small ball versus home run ball. Small ball is bunting and getting somebody to first base. It's not always scoring a home run, but you can't win if you can't get to first base. And that's where we're recalibrating.
One thing I do just want to quickly address is a lot of people have said, you know, what about this passionate MAGA person, this Trump person in my life? You know, throughout this entire year, people asked, as we were doing our relational organizing, well, what do I say to, you know, my uncle who's so into Trump and is just always giving me a hard time? Not a great use of your energy, not right now. You know, for those people who do have honest questions and that we might be able to have convincing and persuasive growth with over time, that's great. But even that, protect your heart right now. And that doesn't mean that you yell back or, you know, stay true to who you are and say, you know, I'm not ready for this conversation right now, you know, but we have important work to do ahead, and it's going to require a lot of energy. And so I want you all to think about protecting that energy a little bit and protecting your spirit and not letting those folks who come really remember their goal always is to make us feel powerless, make us feel like giving up, it's not worth it, and to just get off the field. But we're not going to do that. You all have told me that you are not going to give up, and I'm not either. So I want to remind you as we close that this community has become a community of over 600,000 women. And we even have new people here joining us tonight. And we're going to continue on this journey all together. I do want to make sure that we do drop again the link to the page where you can scroll and find the map of all of the local Red, Wine, and Blue Troubled Nation groups across the country, because it is so important to be able to find your people where you are. And we're so strong when we do that in finding community where we're at so that we all can rise together. So in the chat, I think, Drew, if you want to even pause the chat, if that's possible, to make sure that that link can get dropped one last time. There it is. You all see it right there, to Trouble Nation, right there in the chat at 8 p.m. We will be here. Many of you are asking what we're going to do next. I want you first to take a breath, grieve, and when you're ready, then we are going to be a big part of this resistance. And I couldn't be prouder to march forward with all of you. We will be here to provide support, training, organized action at the local level, at the national level when that is required. And we are going to bring our whole hearts, our creativity. Oh my God, are you a group of creative people? It's something I love so much about working with all of you. And so we're going to bring our whole selves from that sturdy place. And sometimes we're going to feel a little shook too, and that's okay, because we're in community and we're going to step forward and step back as we need. And we're going to do this together. And I know that we're going to find strength, and maybe even more strength than we've ever found before.